On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
I'm excited for this conversation because I don't even know if you've come out of the heat of battle. I think the stink of battle is still on you.
And you always have this funnel that's flowing forward. So you're never using new money to acquire new clients. You're using the money from the newly acquired client to acquire a new client in the future.
For the audience, I hope you're paying attention. This is really, really, really powerful. This is what will turn the heat up in your business, period.
I think of business as sport, right? This is my NBA. This is my MLB. I feel like I'm going pro as an entrepreneur. And if I want to be in the game forever, I need to take care of myself and be healthy, right?
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz, Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast, coming back to you here today with another king on the stage. I got my brother, Brian Velez. How we doing, Brian?
Doing great, Chaz. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you taking a few minutes with me here today and giving of yourself. The audience, man, we just love hearing success stories, and you're in the midst. I mean, we're all in the midst of our success stories, but you're like really, really in the midst of really coming up and all kinds of changes happening in your business and seeing some major growth. And I'm excited for this conversation because I don't even know if you've come out of the heat of battle. I think the stink of battle is still on you, and I think you're going to give some great insight. So, Brian, tell us what kind of business that you have.
Yeah, so I'm the owner and operator of Physical Culture. We're a health and performance gym in Brooklyn, New York. So we work with high-performing people. So a lot of white-collar professionals, a lot of athletes, and people who generally just want to improve their health and longevity.
I love it, man. There's all kinds of talks around people trying to be like, 100, 108, 140. Like you said, people trying to go for that longevity. Although you said one quick thing here. We got a sidebar here away from business for a half second because you said you're in Brooklyn.
Yes, sir.
And I have one of my favorite memories in Brooklyn. It's at a place called Peter Luger.
Oh, it's familiar? Great. Yeah. Very, very.
Very. Exactly. I'll tell you what, if the audience doesn't know about Peter Luger, give us just a quick 2 seconds on Peter Luger because it's in your hometown.
I mean, it's one of the oldest steakhouses in New York City. I think if you're going to get steak out, there are plenty of great steakhouses in New York City, no shortage. But Peter Luger's is probably one of the godfathers of steak in New York City. So check it out if you're there.
When I was there probably 10 years ago, I just had to go. I had heard about Peter Luger. And the only option was 10:45 p.m. And I'm like, well, I guess I got to take it. And, of course, they come in white jackets all the way down, the whole nine. I had porterhouse for 2 that night. It was
good for
beautiful. I was by myself, just to be clear, but I ate the whole. Actually, I didn't eat the whole thing. I saved a couple bites for the next morning. It was a delicious breakfast in the hotel. Anyway, Brian, let's talk about business for a little bit here. You're helping people become their best version of themselves physically. Kind of Gathering the Kings help people become the best versions of themselves in their business and marriage and all the other things in life. And so we're like, kindred spirits here. And I think that really becoming our best version is really ultimately what we're trying to do. Why is that so important for you? I mean, obviously you're on the physical side and you're helping people become, elite physically. Why is that like the inner part of the depths of who you are and why you do this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think training just makes you a better person. Training, I've been playing sports my entire life since I was 4 years old, multi-sport athlete, started lifting weights when I was 15. And through the ups and downs of life, training, going to the gym, playing sport, that has been the thing that has kept me on the straight and narrow path and kind of kept focused throughout my life. So I genuinely do think people who train are better people. So, I think it trains your mindset, not only just your physical, but your emotional state, your mindset. You move with more focus, more intention. And I want to give that to as many people as possible. I know how much it has impacted my life. And to the extent I could give it to more people who are open-minded about training and taking care of themselves, I mean, I really want to give that to people.
Yeah, and I think training, probably everybody who's listening has trained to some degree, but maybe there's somebody listening right now that really doesn't understand how training physically could impact them mentally and or in business. And so since this is a business podcast, tell us, how could that person listening right now understand the benefits of how they could become a better business owner or a better thought leader or a better thinker, or a better leader just by training and doing the hard things that you just talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you do hard things every day, it makes everything else easier. That's first off. But having your health is the foundation for life, right? I think of business as sport, right? This is my NBA. This is my MLB. I feel like I'm going pro as an entrepreneur. And if I want to be in the game forever, I need to take care of myself and be healthy, right? And so when you build these disciplines and these habits over time, whether it's, waking up at a certain time, pushing yourself in the gym, eating the right things throughout the day, you feel better, you look better, you're more confident in yourself, and you just move with a different type of energy.
Yeah, man. I'm going pro. Or, I mean, the idea of some people maybe already think that they're pro, which is great, but even at a pro status. It's not like, in fact, if anything, it's the pros are the ones working out even harder. They're working even better or staying up later or waking up earlier. They're doing it even more extreme is my point, right?
Right, right. I actually think of it, I'm a big baseball fan, so I actually
Okay.
think of it as I'm in single A baseball, and I'm in the minor leagues trying to kind of, get promoted, work my way up and get to the majors one day and maybe the Hall of Fame. So, it's a journey, it's a grind, but this is really what we play for. And the great thing about business is you could play that sport forever. There are plenty of guys who are playing business into their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I want to be there too one day.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, especially if we're going to live to 140, bro. 80 is just getting rolling.
Yes, sir.
I mean, come on. Okay. So health has been important enough for you to be able to share it with other people. Tell us what happened for you to even start this company. Obviously, you did something beforehand. Give us just a little bit of the backdrop, why you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I think I was subconsciously imprinted at a young age. So my father actually, he was in the Marine Corps when he was younger, and he
Wow.
started a real estate business when he was 29, 30. And this is a guy who came from nothing. He was an immigrant from Puerto Rico, went to the military at 17, 18 years old, got out, and then started his own business. And unfortunately, he passed away when I was a child. But I did have very fond memories of him when I was young, being in his office, sitting in his desk, and just I think at that point, it was really imprinted into me that, hey, you can actually work for yourself and make a good living. And so, kind of fast forward a little bit, sport has been a huge part of my life, been an athlete my entire life. But as I got into school, obviously I was playing competitive sports, but I was also a good student. And so I went to Columbia University. I studied applied math and economics. So traditional engineering background, got into working at a hedge fund as a trader. And then eventually I worked in Wall Street as an equity research analyst at an investment bank. So very in the nitty gritty of corporate finance. And I would sit at my job all day just thinking to myself, how did I get to this point?
Yeah.
And all the guys how do I get out? And I realized that we were basically glorified weather people, and the people who were actually making the money were the company CEOs, and right. So we were raising money, IPOing companies, and it was these companies, those executives were the ones who were actually getting paid out, and we were only getting slivers of it for working so much. And so, I was tired of playing fantasy football, and I wanted to play my own team, manage my own team. And the one thing that has been kind of constant through my life, to my earlier point, was the gym. And so I teamed up with my two business partners who were actually coaches at a previous gym that I was at before. And we had always jokingly spoken about starting a business, but it wasn't until I was making enough money working in investment banking to actually make it come to fruition. Well, as equity research analyst, I used to model out companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, these big multi-billion dollar companies. And I always thought to myself, if I could write a financial model for a big corporation like Pepsi or Coca-Cola, I could do it for a small business. And so I did just that. I built out financial models, and it ended up making sense. The math, and the rest is history.
I love that, dude. Not that my respect for you wouldn't have been extremely high. It already is, just based on your history and story and success. But now I just see this conversation in a completely new light, because there's a lot of people that do well in fitness who don't do well in business. And there's a lot of contractors who do well as a contractor, but they don't do well in business. And as you mentioned earlier, it's the game of business that lasts forever and ever. It's not working on the job site or working in the gym or, working at an edible arrangements franchise, which was my first business. And so it's like, okay, now we're going to have a conversation of how to run a business, financial models, and how do we pull and tug on levers, which I just think is just such a greater opportunity for whoever's listening. Inside of that, so you just set up the stage for us beautifully. There's obviously been an on-ramp to that, but what's been, from zero to here, where you're like, you're in essence, you're exploding right now. Like, I'll just toot your horn for you. You're exploding right now. And so what's been the one catalyst? I know there's been several, but what's been the one thing inside that model that you've built that's just triggered the rest of the fire?
Yeah, I think, when it comes down to business, I kind of segment it into three pieces. There's acquisition, there's fulfillment, and there's retention. And for us, I think for a long time, we were focused so much on the service, providing a great service and fulfilling that. And we were very good on retention, but we did not have an acquisition engine for the business. And so this past year, we really started investing a lot more money in resources into acquisition, whether it's through paid ads on Instagram and Facebook. And more recently, we're starting to get more into content creation just to establish our new brand. And so I think focusing a lot on acquisition and being able to cover the cost of customer acquisition and, start building out that recurring revenue stream from memberships on an ongoing basis kind of really was the unlock for us. But you have to spend money to make money. And I think for a long time, especially early in the business, I was so focused on paying myself just to get scraps out of the business. And I always thought that I was picking the fruit a little too early. And it wasn't until I realized, wait, I can't pick the fruit too early. I need to let it grow. And I also need to spend more money to grow the business so that the fruit could be bigger in the future. And that's when things started to kind of click for me.
Wow. That was such a succinct answer. I appreciate the high quality answer there. There's several pieces that we need to like dissect. Okay. So first off, acquisition, fulfillment, and retention. You gave a really good idea of fulfillment being, do the thing that you say you're going to do for your client. Retention is do it so well that they keep doing it with you.
Sure.
Which are kind of both back end operations. Okay, fine. So acquisitions on the front end, we're talking sales and marketing.
Yes, sir.
You said you spent a lot of time in that answer talking about marketing and whether it's paid ads or just lead generation through content or, sticking your ankle out on the street. I mean, you got plenty of people that drive by, Point is that you need leads, but secondarily, right behind that, you have to have a sales process that can usher those leads into some sort of an offer. So tell us about that for a quick second, because you said you've leaned in hard now to investing and lead gen. What happens after that for you, or what have you learned through that process?
Yeah. So really what we do now is kind of, it's more client finance acquisition. So we have a high ticket upfront offer. So we'll spend money to acquire leads. I do the entire sales process. So I'll kind of qualify the leads, jump on a call with them, and then kind of funnel them over to the coach. So my coaches don't do any of the selling process, right? The real focus for me is to get clients acquired at a price such that the cash we collect upfront is multiples of that. So that way the client that we acquire is paying for the future acquisition of a new client, right? So if you're getting in a position where you're doing that, basically the flywheel can continue to roll so that, a portion, not everyone's obviously going to convert into a recurring membership, but a portion of them will, and that'll kind of build up the back end revenue over time. But then you always have this funnel that's flowing forward. So you're never using new money to acquire new clients. You're using the money, the newly acquired client to acquire a new client in the future. So that's really helped us a bit.
I love everything that you've said here. Now we're totally over here in Mosey Nation, breaking stuff down.
Yeah.
But I want to break it down a little further, because what you're talking about, CAC, client acquisition cost, or cost of client acquisition, is really, really big. And it applies to every industry, not just fitness. In essence, what you're saying is that you have to spend money to get a lead and then to make a sale, but that collection has to be enough to then fuel the next, not just the next client, AKA paying for leads or lead generation, but like several of them.
Correct.
Give us just a little bit more detail there, or if you can, give us some numbers so that way we can kind of wrap this concept around some of the things that you're looking at every day on your screen.
Yeah. So just for simple metrics, like it usually costs me about $300 to acquire a client. And so the upfront offer for the average client would be $900 for a 6-week trial. We also have more premium packages that I kind of think of icing on the cake. But in that situation, if it costs us $300 to acquire a client and we're collecting $900 in cash up front, I'm making 3 to 1 of my money immediately. And then if that client converts into a recurring membership down the line, that's just icing on the cake. We could just stack that up forever. So now, obviously not every 6-week trial client converts. In general, I'd say probably 75% of our 6-week trials convert into recurring memberships. So people fall off, but it's not really a big deal, because one of the 4 clients who didn't convert into a recurring membership, I could just take that $900 to acquire a new lead in the future and get another customer.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I'm going to give one little synopsis here. Tell me what you think about this, because this, for the audience, like, I hope you're paying attention. This is really, really, really powerful. Like, this is what will turn the heat up in your business, period. And so that $300 broken down even further is, he spent, let's say, $1,000 on ads somewhere. It generated X amount of leads. Those X amount of leads turned into X or Y amount of phone calls. The Y amount of phone calls turned into that one $900 sale. And from that $900 sale, it still cost him $300 to get that client. And so now he has wiggle room here to go run his business. And if you happen to be listening to this and you're one of this dude's clients, first off, congratulations, because you're probably going to get ripped and shredded. Number 2 is, this is how a business works. This is how a business works, is that they provide value, and so much so to where they can make a profit. This is how your business should be happening as well. This is really for the audience, because there's so many people out there trying to get to that 7-figure mark, even multiple 7 figures, and they're just not charging enough, because they like, oh, $900, it only cost me $300. Maybe I'll only charge. It's like, no. Like, you have to operate like that, because then you got to take some of that money and put it right back into the next one, because you do have a fall off ratio. You can only help a certain amount of people. You're limited on the back end. There's all kinds of factors that go into what that profit looks like. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, especially for us, we recently rebranded the business to physical culture. And one of the big things was raising our prices pretty significantly. And, we want to serve everyone we can. You can give free content out, over social media. You can come out with free courses. There are plenty of ways to help people out. And whenever I encounter a lead who doesn't have enough money to work with us, I always tell them YouTube is free. There's plenty of information out there. You're paying us
That's right.
not for the knowledge, you're paying us for the execution, right?
Yeah.
You can find anything you want about health and fitness online for free, but you're really paying for a coach through the accountability. And that's what you're spending the money on, the coaching, not necessarily access to the gym. And so I have actually found that when you raise the prices, you get a better client. They're more bought in. They care more about what you're doing. They value it more, and they're more likely to stay for a longer period of time. And by extension, they also know other wealthy people. And so it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it does help the business quite a bit. But the reality is you just can't help everyone, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I love the little tag in there that you placed, that when we spend money, and not just any amount of money, enough to where it makes us hurt a little bit. When we just like, then typically we pay attention to that
Yeah.
because it hurts. And if you don't, then maybe you need to spend more. I don't know what your problem is, but at least when I spend money, typically it's like, okay, now I'm going to pay attention to this. I'm invested, literally, not only with my money, but now my attention. And that's typically when you get results, right?
100%. Yeah, it's funny. Every time we used to run a free offer in the past, people wouldn't show up to the gym. And I actually have done posts before on social media where I have called people out. I was like, well, if I gave you a month of our membership for free, I guarantee you wouldn't show up to the gym because there's no skin in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same thing for Gathering the Kings. We started off with just a single premium level peer-to-peer mastermind. We've since opened up some like entry level, access points for smaller business owners trying to just get around successful people, which I think is great. But I'll tell you, we don't have any problems with premium level clients.
No.
Whether they were financially ready or they were like, oh, this is a little bit of a stretch, but I'm going to do it anyway, right?
Sure.
That mindset will pull you forward in your business, whether you're getting fitness coaching, whether you're joining a peer group, or whether you're investing in your family. I've noticed the same thing about my family. I can do a date night, or if I like really do a date night, I'm like in. You write the note. You don't just order the flowers. You go pick them up, and you make sure that they're perfect, and you deliver them hand right from you to her. Like there's just so much more intention when you're invested, right?
100%. Absolutely.
All right, well, so let's move on here. You've given us kind of like the key of what it looked like to turn the heat up. I'm sure you've stumbled on a bunch of stuff. Give us the one thing that comes to your mind where you're like, dude, if I could not have done this. But I'm sure you learned a bit. Give it to us. What was it?
Yeah. So kind of on the conversation about marketing. So we picked the fruit too early, probably around 2021, coming out of the pandemic, coming out of COVID. Now you have to put it in perspective. I used to work for Wall Street making quite a bit of money. And so there's a lifestyle you need to also maintain a little bit as well. Now, I'm a very frugal person, but you also want to get paid for the effort you're putting into the business. And so I found myself picking the fruit too early from the business and taking the gas off of acquisition, right? And I thought that we could kind of continue to float the business and we would keep growing. There was an obvious drop in growth for the business in 2021. Now, obviously, there are other things going on with inflation and cost of living increasing, especially in New York City. But I do take responsibility, and I realized that, yeah, I stepped off the gas in terms of marketing spend, especially in the early years of a business. You can't do that, right? I would even argue in the first 5 years of your business, you probably shouldn't be paying yourself too much. You need to keep reinvesting money into the business. So obviously, we've course redirected at this point, but I would say that's a big issue that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make, and we made it too. So everyone's human.
Yeah, we are. You're right. And I think that the cool part inside of that, you said that you're frugal. How is it that someone who's frugal got trapped in picking too early? Because those are kind of two different principles. One is leaving it on the tree. The other one is I took it, but now I'm careful with it. Right?
Sure.
Give us kind of like how that works. Because you're still a frugal person, even though now you're reinvesting.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's all relative, right? $5,000 when you're making 200K is different than $5,000 when you're making 60K. Right.
That's right.
So I think especially if you're coming from a previous situation where you're working a corporate job, making a lot of money, and then transitioning to being an entrepreneur, that's a big culture shock. It's a big ego hit that a lot of people just can't stomach. Right.
Yeah.
And because you're also going to that understanding that it could fail, and you also don't have a timeline on when you're going to get back to that previous salary. So you kind of have to throw all these timelines out of your head and just kind of stick to the process, keep growing the business, and your time will come when it comes. But you can't pick the fruit too early.
Yeah, I love the analogy that you keep giving of picking the fruit too early. I think that you're right too, that especially if you've had previous experience with making large amounts of money, whether corporate job or different scenario, whatever the deal is, when you come into that and you have to kind of give that up, at least for me, it was like, well, I don't have any other options here. I should probably run as hard as I can.
Yeah.
I was probably the only difference is that I was married at that time, but it's still like, married and children, and it's like, okay, dude, like we got to make this stuff happen, and we got to make it happen fast. So that's my encouragement to the listener is that you're right. You shouldn't pluck it off the tree too soon. Inside of that, that should be like fuel. It should be like, hey, dude, write it on the board. I made nothing today. Good. Okay. What about tomorrow? Let's see if I can make some tomorrow. And obviously there's some targets there that need to be identified. And what's the point where I can start plucking a little bit? And I think there's even like a little bit of emotion of like pluck a little bit, maybe then a little bit more, then a little bit more. And like, there's a work into that because you still got to eat, but let it burn, right?
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz, Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've become a lot more formulaic with how we pay ourselves now. Like there are certain metrics I watch, and we look at like trailing three and 6 month revenue, and we take a percentage of that, just so I know I'm always on the right path and I'm not paying ourselves too much. And then it's also more performance based too, right? You eat what you kill. That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur, right? There's no floor, but there's also no ceiling either. So to your point, you just got to run faster if you're not making enough.
Yeah. And which is, we have 100% control.
Yeah.
I mean, you control today how many phone calls you've already made. If you're in New York City, it's already 11:40. How many phone calls did you make today? Well, that was dependent upon how many you wanted to make, because I know you got leads.
Yes, sir.
So I think that the combination of what we're saying here for the audience is, look, man, get after it. Like you're on a timeline of sorts, pressurize yourself. Cool. Like it's okay. But at the same time, at one point, sometime or another, like that day does come where you can pay yourself, and not just like menial, like it can be worth it.
It should be worth it if you're doing it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I mean, looking back, I'd tell my younger self, like, I delayed a long time, man. 5 years would have been nice.
I hear you.
But it's like, some of that, we just become obsessed, right? Like, I mean, okay, so talk about that from a quick angle of you, being in a world, I mean, investment banking, you want to talk about obsessed, like, bro, like that industry in itself is like what a lot of people hold up as success, right?
Sure.
So what was that like for you, taking that maybe energy from what you learned from that industry and applying it to your own business? Was that kind of like running in mud for a minute there?
I mean, I definitely learned a lot from my bosses in banking. I mean, definitely my managing director who oversaw me. I learned a lot from her, just the way I even do things today, whether it's managing my email or running meetings internally for the team. I do exactly what she did with us. Yes, it could be a lot and it could be intense. And I'm sure my team sometimes will, they're like, oh, Brian's in corporate mode right now. It's not to mean I'm not a person, but I think there's a certain level of diligence and a certain energy you move with when you're in those settings, because it is sink or swim. Most of those situations in investment banking or any corporate job that's that demanding, I would say, you really need to perform, right? It's a very up or out mentality. It's either you're moving up in the standings and you're getting promoted, or they're going to kick you out somehow or force you out. So I think just having that mentality is probably good as an entrepreneur. And you realize once you're an entrepreneur that a lot of other entrepreneurs who are competitive with you don't have that same standard. And so what I realized, especially as running a gym, is that a lot of gym owners are just gym bros, or they just love coaching, or they're just good athletes. And I'm coming at it from a different angle as a business guy. And when I have conversations with other business owners, even today, or even 4 years ago when we first opened, the things I was thinking about, not even having opened the business compared to somebody who was running a gym for 10 years, was completely different. We were playing two different sports. And over time, you start to lap them and you realize, well, it's because I had this huge, this pedigree from coming from an Ivy League school and, having an engineering background and I'm very good with numbers and things like that. And it really does add up. These are very useful skills that you should have. It's not just about writing the best workouts. It's about running a business.
Yeah, I love it, man. Okay, well, let's talk about along the way, we're going to keep this obsession kind of lane. I know that you've given up things. I'm sure friendships, I'm sure relationships. Talk about what the obsession in a good way. Like, I don't mean like you have to be obsessed and you have to give up everything to have a successful business. Although I think that there's a play for that. I think I gave up a ton of stuff. I've never really talked about that. Maybe we should do a show on that. So my question to you, Brian, here is along the way, I know you've given up some stuff. Give some examples of what those things were, but then also maybe like how that benefited you as a holistic person, not just necessarily I'm giving up these things so I can be rich. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when you become an entrepreneur, there's a lot of sacrifice that you have to accept initially from the jump, whether it's making less money, whether it's having less time to spend with friends, less vacations, you can't buy nice clothes, things like that. It can really beat down your ego though over time, right? I've had to give up a relationship. I was engaged previously, and
Wow.
our lives were just going in different directions. And she did kind of see through the whole banking journey and me starting the business and everything. But after a while, it is really tough to progress in life if you are the one that's holding back the relationship because you're not making enough money or you're not at the point that you want to be at. And so I do think there's a lot of struggles and trials and tribulations you need to overcome as an entrepreneur. But again, it also does give you another opportunity to refocus and kind of rebuild the foundation and kind of make sure you're getting all your bases covered. For me, health is a huge thing for me. I always make sure to take care of my body. I always make sure to take care of my mind. That's first and foremost, because I can't perform if I'm tired or if I'm sick or if I'm not feeling confident. And so thankfully my business is in alignment with that. So it makes my life very easy to, go to the gym and take care of myself and eat well. And there's a lot of alignment there, which is really positive.
Yeah, I'm glad you spun it in this direction because that's what I was hoping that you would do. Really, the obsession of getting rid of the negative things, but it also allows us to then obsess further about the other things outside of the business that also then either help the business or just help us as an individual become our best version. So I appreciate you going there. Your optimism towards how easy it is for you, I think, is actually you, because how many times have we heard the guy that who's a gym owner or who's a painter, and he's like, yeah, I haven't painted my house. I know that I need to paint my house, but I don't paint my house because I paint all day long and I don't want to come home and paint my house, right? Like, you could totally say that about mind work and body work, but you don't. So is that just because it's so important to you, or how are you incorporating those other things? I know that you own the freaking gym, but you still got to choose to go there as a person working out, not the owner looking around and doing owner things. Talk to us.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I like to be a good example for the clients I work with. And so I actually even tell my team all the time, I want you guys to work out in front of the clients because they need to see what it looks like also. And so I'm busy. I have a lot of clients who are professionals, also entrepreneurs. They're busy too. And if I could do it, they could do it. And then conversely, if they could do it, I can definitely do it, right? If they're working 12, 14 hours a day and then showing up to the gym to get after it, I really have no excuse either. Or if I have a mother of 2 or 3 and she's running around all over the place and she also has a career and she's still making time to come into the gym, I have no excuse either. So I think it's a very reflexive thing that goes on in the gym. And I think it's very inspiring. We all inspire each other. And I try to do that on the gym floor with people as well. I want to be a good example.
Yeah. And so practically inside of, okay, yeah, you're going to schedule time to go to the gym. Let's use mind work or just learning as something different, because maybe you don't go to the actual gym for that. And so you're not being like a physical representation of what it is. To be an example, you're just in your office or you're just in your room doing the things that you know you need to do and to be obsessed with, aka the things I'm teaching you guys to do. It's the same stuff though, but you're still choosing to do it. Talk to us about that. How do you find time for that? How do you practically do that? When, how, who, all that stuff.
Yeah. So the first part of my day in the morning is in my home office. So this is usually time for deep work. I'm usually doing some more back-end operational things. And then kind of midday around 2, 3 p.m., I will head into the gym. And so I'll close the gym also with the coaches. And so that's when I'm going to work out with the clients. That's when I kind of touch base with people. Hey, how's everything going? Just kind of develop those relationships with people. And then usually in between that, when I'm driving in my commute, I'm trying to listen to some type of podcast or even just talk to myself. Having conversations with yourself, I think, is really important. Sometimes I think we over consume content and we don't reflect on it enough. And so I really try to make it a point to have conversations with myself throughout the day about what I'm looking at, what I'm digesting, what I want to focus on. And then at nighttime, that's usually time for me to rest. But Of course, you know how it is. You have things on your mind. If you want to kind of explore certain ideas when it's really quiet, that's probably the best time to do it. Take your dog for a walk, go for an extra long walk, and kind of just be with your thoughts by yourself at night. Really goes a long way to kind of creating some mental peace there.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think you gave just a really great example. There's a leading question here around you not coming into the office or the gym until 2 or 3 p.m. How does your team, or what have you done to communicate with your team that that's the expectation, that they're not going to see you until then? And that in essence, you're doing other things, deep work on yourself, operationally in the business. In essence, you're in a hole, you're being quiet. You probably have some sort of, sound headphones on and you're not being bothered by anybody and you're doing deep work. How is the business still running without you during that time?
Yeah, so thankfully I have a supportive team. It's me and my business partner, and we have 4 full-time coaches. So it's really 6 of us who run the business. I really handle all the operational side of the business, the marketing, the sales, all the back-end finances, everything. They focus on coaching, right? They don't have to think about anything else. They'll help out with content, obviously. But there is a real separation of church and state in terms of who's running the business and who's working on the business versus who's working in the business. And
Yeah.
so I think, I try to lead by example. They know I work harder than all of them combined. So I don't think there's ever a question that I'm not working. I'm just sitting at home,
Yeah.
watching movies
Netflix.
or yeah, there's no shot that's happening. And they know it because when I'm, I'll call them in the morning. Hey, I got a new client for you. Hey, let's schedule this. Hey, I have somebody who's inquiring about this. So they know things are always happening. Even on weekends, I'm hitting them up. So I think there's a mutual respect and understanding. And listen, my philosophy with work is I understand as a business owner, you're never going to care about the business more than I do as an employee. And so I just kind of deal with that. And, thankfully, the gym is such an interesting business where it is a passion for people. All my coaches are passionate about this. And I always make sure to remind them that they actually live out their passion, whereas most people just work a job they hate. And so they should be thankful and grateful for this opportunity. We all should collectively.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that by itself should make you want to work hard and get after it. So I think everyone's on the same page and we never have any issues like that.
That's good, man. I appreciate the honesty there. I assume that there's some systems and some communication that you've put in place, like you said, that they know what you're working on. The last piece that you mentioned there, as far as just collectively being grateful, I think that entrepreneurs should think in that same vein. Like, man, I literally got to I got to wake up today and choose to be on a podcast with Brian. Like, wow. Or whatever business that you're in, or whatever meeting that I'm having this week, whatever business that I'm addressing at that moment. And it's like, this was on me. I got to do that. I chose to set up this meeting. I'm freaking leading this meeting. This is incredible. Or do I just go have a job that I hate, right? And maybe someone's listening today and then they have a job, they're not an entrepreneur yet, which is fine. But even inside of that place, to be able to have that type of energy of creation and really enjoying, like you said, like you're for your coaches, maybe they're not an owner, but to have a gratefulness around like, wow, this is what I get to do every day. Like, it's pretty incredible, and a pretty small percentage of people who actually get to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say most people, especially my peers that I went to school with, all very successful people, I'd say 99% of them probably don't do what they love for a living. And that's really sad. These are very capable, intelligent people, very hardworking, but there probably is a part of them that is unfulfilled, right? And so for me, I really made it a point when I quit the banking job, that I was never going to work for someone ever again in my life. I made that oath to myself. And, I think it's incredibly important, to the extent it's possible, to live in alignment with your passion and soul and try to make a living out of it, because life is a long game. And if you're going to be working, doing something you don't enjoy for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I mean, it's going to eat at you at some point, right? So you might as well start young.
Yeah, I love that, man. We'll kind of end up here with some information along the way. Obviously, you've already quoted several resources even in this show, but is there a book? Is there a podcast? Is there someone that you're following that you get just a lot of great stuff from that you can recommend to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one book I'd recommend to people is The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not. Please take at least a minute and tell us what this is.
Sure. So it's actually based off of TweetStorm. So Naval is the founder of a venture capital firm, and he wrote this TweetStorm a couple years back about how to get rich quick, or how to get rich, basically how to get rich quick. But it's really more of an expansion on business, philosophy, life, and it's just a lot of really great frameworks for people to kind of think from. The concept is basically, how do you get rich without getting lucky? That's what he's trying to solve for. And he's explained that building wealth is not just a luck thing. It's a skill that you have to build and cultivate. And some of it has nothing to do with business. Some of it has nothing to do with numbers. A lot of it is internal work, which I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. And so very, very insightful. I actually give this book to my cousins. I give it to anyone who's like a budding entrepreneur. I always give it to them because there's just a lot of good frameworks there that are helpful for people to learn from. You can always read some books on nitty-gritty finances and stuff like that. But I'd say in the beginning for people, it's really good to have a good foundation of good frameworks. And if you know how to think, you know how to problem solve, and you know what wealth actually looks like, you can eventually kind of reverse engineer your way into it.
Oh yeah, I love that. It's been a while since someone has recommended a book that I've not heard anything about and not read, 10 times myself. And so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
We'll put it in the show notes, but I'll be getting that book as well. Last couple pieces here. I want to kind of give an opportunity here for the audience to connect with you and for you to be able to help them if you can remotely. I know that you said you have a gym, and I want to ask you a couple questions about, do you work with clients remotely? If you've got an audience member who right now is, crushing it in their business, but they need to level up their health game, can they work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with clients on site and also remotely. I have clients who are out of the country all the time or who travel quite a bit for work. It is obviously very nice to have the clients on site. I would say for the clients who work remote, there is a level of independence that's expected out of you. You probably should be of a higher training age. I wouldn't say you should start remote, but you can eventually transition to remote. We're trying to teach people how to fish, right? I want to teach you how to train on your own, how to eat properly, how to establish good, healthy habits. And so over time, working with our coaches, you should be able to work out on your own and probably not even need us in the future also.
Yeah, love that. Cool. I got one last question here for you. And I want to know, this is interesting always when I get to ask a young guy this question, but if you could roll back the clock to your younger self, and I do mean this, even though you're young, what would you whisper to your younger self in that moment?
I'll give you a practical answer, and
what are you going to buy?
And I'll give you some philosophical answer. Yeah, I was going to say, buy some Bitcoin, buy some more.
That's right.
I would say, I think I followed most of the things I told myself already. That's a good question. Well, I'll give you some perspective. I started the gym when I was 26. I'm 31 years old right now. I knew that I wanted to start the business young because the later in life you start a business, you have family, kids, obligations, lifestyle creep, a house, right? So I felt that starting a business young gave me this space and air cover to really go all in without any distractions and just sacrifice a good chunk of my 20s, probably some of my 30s, so that I could build a good foundation. And so I'd probably whisper that again, start earlier, probably. Start thinking about something when you're 21, right? And it's funny enough, I took a business school course at Columbia when I was 21 with one of my good friends, and we actually created a gym. We had to create a business for the final project of the class. And, at the time it was a joke, we wanted to start a gym and everything like that, but it actually came into fruition 5-6 years later. So, it's funny how life works, but I would just say start earlier. It's never too early to start. If anything, you're going to learn a lot more running a business than you will ever learn from business school. And I know that for a fact.
What do you think? Now I'm sidebarring on my own show here because I already told you last question, but I'm going to ask you another one. Do you think that it was that moment at Columbia when you made that business plan with your classmate, was that the seed in the subconscious, or was there a different seed previous to that of you in a gym and entrepreneurship, and that was just a little spark of this previously made seed?
I think it's a compounded effect of a lot of things. I think building the gym in college was an interesting thought experiment. It wasn't until I actually graduated that one of my training partners actually opened up a CrossFit gym in Brooklyn. And I actually got to help him build it out from like day one. So like we were like doing construction and stuff. 21 years old. I just wanted to work out and hang out. I just recently graduated. And, I got to see him grow the business for the first maybe 2 or 3, 4 years. And I got an inside look underneath the hood of what it actually takes. And I sat there to myself and I was like, this is totally doable. And then once I worked in banking and I started learning the financial modeling skills and, you start to accumulate all these skills over time. I think I arrived to the point when I was 26 where I was like, I have every single skill I need to execute on this. Now is the right time. But, I think seeing it in person, seeing actually somebody who's running their own business from scratch is a real eye-opening experience. And you realize it's not as crazy as you think. It is daunting for sure, absolutely. And there's a lot of pitfalls, definitely, but it's doable for sure if you work hard enough.
Dude, you just fulfilled exactly why this show exists. And it's because you got courage in that moment. This
Yeah.
whole show exists for you and me right now to be able to transfer courage to the listeners. And them listening to your story, they go, oh, well, if that guy can do it, then I can do it. That's exactly what happened to you in that moment. You
Yeah.
were in the midst of it. You saw it happening and you're like, well, my buddy's no different than me. I'm as smart. I have the same skill. He just is doing it.
100%.
And then
Sometimes
took
you
off
just
running.
sometimes you just gotta see it. And I would even say sometimes apprenticeship is probably more important than education in terms of school. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the midst of that, yeah, you're watching him, but you're learning all the things, like you said, which then the courage turns into confidence and the confidence turns into action.
Yes.
And then there you go down the story. Okay, so how can the listener find you? Number one, if they're across the country and they want to reach out to one of the best trainers in the country and have you or your coaches help them, how can they find you? Or if they're in Brooklyn or New York City, where are you located?
Yeah, so we're in Brooklyn, New York. So we're in the Gowanus area, so between Park Slope and Carroll Gardens. You can go visit our website, physicalculture.co, and you can also look at our Instagram, physicalcultureNYC. And then my personal Instagram is Brian Velez. I'm pretty active there, so you can always reach out to me directly if you want also.
Love it, man. We'll put all that in the show notes as well. I hope that a bunch of really, really high-performing people reach out to you because they got to stay high-performing with their mind and their body, as many of us in Gathering the Kings think about and do regularly as is. And so we're going to be having some future conversations, you and me, on the same topic as well. So I'm super happy to meet you. Thank you for being here. Blessings to you and your team and all the people that you're touching, not only in New York City, but across the country with fitness. Thank you so much for being here, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chaz, and enjoy the holidays.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.